I was talking with Krista, my wife, the new Stephen leader. Actually, we were talking about some health issues that we've been kind of dealing with. Nothing serious, but I just noticed one thing in that it had to do with my leg. When my daughter was young, we used to talk about when we're sitting down on the floor, we need to crisscross applesauce. Crisscross applesauce. It was just a phrase where you're just kind of crossing your legs and sitting on the ground. Very easy to do for young kids and so forth. We said, Elizabeth, when you're sitting down, you need to crisscross applesauce. And that meant she had to cross her legs and sit there patiently. But obviously my daughter is, much older now. We don't say stuff like this. But, I just noticed like these past few weeks, actually a few months, I haven't been able to crisscross applesauce myself. And so I was wondering what's going on? Like my left hip is okay, but my right hip, I just can't turn it a certain way anymore. So even though I try to crisscross my leg, my left leg's okay, but my right leg is not doing okay. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor told me, yes, there's something wrong, and so you need to go see a chiropractor. And so I've never been to a chiropractor. Actually, I've been to a chiropractor before, but nothing serious and nothing long-term. But I met with the chiropractor, and the chiropractor said, there's something wrong with your right hip. And he said that this is something that you need to come back every week for like 6 weeks or 10 weeks or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is pretty serious. And so he was telling me how over time, because I've always been able to jump and be very active, but just that one posture of no longer able to crisscross applesauce, that was an indicator that there was something wrong. And I never thought of it. I mean, like I can walk, I can run, you can punch me here and it doesn't hurt. Actually, don't punch me here. But there's nothing that seems to be wrong. It just, that one position that I've been able to do my whole life, it's harder and more painful to do that. And he was just telling me it's an indicator that there's something wrong with my overall posture and what he called, he wanted to do an adjustment of my bones. And I thought that was okay. And so ever since I've been going, I've actually finished my 10 weeks with him, and I've never been to a chiropractor, and I highly recommend a chiropractor. I always thought that these guys were not real doctors. They're like, that's a phony doctor. Just give me some pills or give me some medicine. But this guy really adjusted my body and kind of put it back into alignment. And he said, he said that if I didn't come to see him sooner, that problem that I have with my right hip would have gotten worse, and eventually to a point where I might even need surgery. So by going to him, I, at the very least, delayed any kind of immediate surgery because of the indicator that there's something wrong with my hip. I would say that our view of God is an indicator of our spiritual health. How you view God is an indicator of your overall spiritual health. Let me explain. Do you view God as just a spectator of your life, or do you see him as sovereign, as in control? Do you view God as somebody who acts or just reacts to you? And I wanted to kind of talk about this question. We've been going through this past summer answers to difficult questions, and today is a question that I wanted to kind of address. It's going to be more of a theological, more of a classroom type situation, but it's a question that I get asked, not often, but it is one of the top 10 questions that I get asked. And especially if you're studying passages in Romans, or certainly the passage we're going to be studying today in Ephesians, the question is, are we predestined to be Christians, or do we have free will? Does the Bible teach predestination, or does the Bible teach free will? Let me state by saying that the question of when a question that somebody would once in a while ask me is, Pastor, do you believe in predestination? And I said, of course I believe in predestination. As a Christian, you believe in predestination. The word predestination is mentioned numerously in the Bible. Pastor, do you believe in free will? Of course I believe in free will. The Bible actually addresses free will. But the bigger question is, what does it mean? What does it mean? If you were to use a word to describe a Christian, what would that word be? If I were to ask you, what is a word that's used in the Bible to describe a Christian? Brother, sister, believer, children of God? Well, a phrase that's used 69 times is the word elect or remnant. Elect or remnant. It's very interesting. This word remnant, it's a word that literally means leftover. So if you were to have like dabao, if you're eating a meal and you wanted to have a to-go box, you're just so full and you have these leftovers. Now, I don't know about you, but we always order, whenever we order too much, we always take it home. We don't leave anything to waste. Now, some of you, I know because I've eaten with some of you, you'll just like leave it. And I'm just surprised. But anyway, I don't want to leave anything to waste. But, it's stuff that we can't eat anymore. We're so full, but we want to take it away, these leftovers. Well, this is what the word leftover, remnant, elect typically alludes to in the Bible. These are typically how the world kind of looks at as worthless, as not much value. But the word remnant, the word leftover, when it comes to God, God assigns high value to those of his people whom he has set aside as his remnant, as his elect. Let me continue on let's just kind of cut to some of the lesson for today. I want to talk about what does it not mean? What does predestination not mean? To be predestined, to be his child, to be a Christian, does not mean that we're robots. So if you have on the PowerPoint, let's keep up with the PowerPoint here. It does not mean that we are robots. It doesn't mean that we have no free will. Okay, that's not what it means. Predestination does not mean that there's no need to evangelize. We need to evangelize. That's how people are saved. That's how people become Christian, is through hearing the gospel. So we need to evangelize. And, the argument that goes, well, if you believe in predestination, that it is God who selects and predestines those that believe, why do you even need to evangelize? My question to them is, it's kind of a funny way of looking at it, but do you believe that you're going to die one day? Yes. Do you believe God knows the day that you're going to die? I think everybody here would say yes. So if God already knows the day that you're going to die, why do you eat? Why do you drink? Why do you sleep? It's because that is the God-ordained way to live, in order for us to live. And so just because God has predestined those who are going to believe, that doesn't negate the importance of evangelism, because evangelism, sharing the gospel, is the God-ordained way of becoming a Christian. And then number 3 is predestination. Predestination is God only predestines those whom he knows who will believe. And so this goes into this aspect of Romans 8, where it talks, and we'll look at it later, but Romans 8, where he says that those whom he foreknew, he predestined. And people think, well, God knows who's going to believe, so that's who he chooses to be his elect. Again, is that your view of God? Is he just reactive, or does he act? Is God